What's happening, everybody? I'm Captain Mike, and welcome to my rigging station, and welcome back to Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus. It is the end of April. What does that mean for guys like you and me? That means grouper season is about to open in just a couple of days here on May 1st. So there's anglers that are really anxious for this opening. They've been waiting for this for months. As you know, grouper fishing has been closed since January. To protect the fish. They're spawning, and of course we obviously need to protect the stocks, right? So it is what it is. A lot of ways to catch grouper all over the state of Florida. Up from the Panhandle, the guys are trolling them. Over on, the east central coast, going out and fishing bait for big gags, pinfish and grunts and other, live baits right on the bottom. Of course, here in the Keys, grouper fishing is, oh God, more popular than almost anything else, right? And of course in the Gulf, the red grouper fishery is outstanding. Here though, on the patch reefs and in the shallow water right along the Atlantic coast of the Keys, there's a different tactic that's really exciting, and it's my favorite way to target the grouper, and that's trolling deep diving plugs. I'm not saying it's the most productive way. I'm not saying it's the most action-packed way, because you could go with long periods of boredom before you get a bite there. But for me, it's the most challenging way and the most rewarding way. So I've been waiting for this for, literally 4 months. I had excellent success in December, right before the closure. And here it is, just a few days away from opening season, and I'm ready to get back out there and get back on top of these things. I fine-tuned my tactics a little bit. I've learned a lot about trolling grouper, and the successes and the failures that I had last winter, November, December timeframe, and I'm ready to get back at it full bore. So let's talk about how I do it. And again, I want you to understand there's a lot of variation to this up in the, Big Bend area, Crystal River, Steinhatchee, all up in there. Like I said, the guys are trolling gags. They're using different kinds of plugs. Hey man, if something's working for you, stick with it by all means, right? I'm not suggesting that you need to switch over, but I'm just going to share a different tactic with you that is deadly effective and, like I said, super exciting with very little bycatch. And that's the key for me, is I don't want to waste my time with other species. I'm looking for groupers. I'm looking for black grouper primarily. That's my number one target, with gag grouper and red grouper being a close second. However, I found that the bulk of my catch here is the black grouper. They're probably 75% black groupers, and a mix of reds and gags make up the remaining 25%. The only other bycatch that I'll really ever see is a big mutton snapper, because I'm fishing big baits for big fish. So first and foremost, I'm in Marathon, but you could do this all over the Keys, from Key Largo to Key West. I've dialed in using Seymour charts and using, the technology that's available to me. I've dialed in not only all of the patch reefs in that 30 to 40 foot range, but I look even closer. And I really just investigate and inspect, and what I'm looking for are ledges. I'm looking for sharp drop-offs, steep ledges, hangs, rocky hangovers. These are the places where the groupers are going to hang. They're going to hang underneath these ledges, in these holes. This is combat fishing. This is hardcore right here. They're not out in the open. They're in there. They're trenched in there, dug in there. Like I said, deep in these holes and overhangs. And the sharper that ledge, the deeper that overhang, the more likely you are to find the grouper. So I'm not trolling in just wide open areas of patch reef. Those are great for yellowtail snappers, mangrove snappers, but that's not what I'm looking for here. I've zeroed it into those sharp ledges. And understand, most guys will troll those sharp ledges right on top of the patch reefs. It works, there's fish there, but I have found much more success fishing the outer band of the patch reefs, where it drops off from 30 to 40 foot, even 50 foot, right along that edge on the Atlantic side, on the ocean side. However, don't discount the inside, where Hawk Channel comes up to meet the patch reefs, you have another drop off there. So while you're fishing this whole stretch that drops off and leads into the open ocean, you also have this side that borders the island chain and drops off into Hawk Channel. So you've got both sides to fish right there along the entire stretch. Inside Hawk Channel, you also have coral heads and rocks that are inside the channel that also hold grouper. So you're not running way offshore. That's, you know, a huge advantage to this fishery. You're literally fishing just a couple of miles off the beach, 3-4 miles off the beach, and you may go east or you may go west, or south or north, you know, of course, depending on where you are in the islands. But the point is, you're not running very far offshore. Once I focus my efforts on these ledges, I'm going to get there, I'm going to set my spread. I'll fish a ledge for 30 to 60 minutes, you know, depending on the area, and then I'm out of there, okay? I'm not going to just continue to troll at 4 or 5 knots all the way to my next spot. It'll take me forever. I'll reel up my lines and I'll run to the next spot. And that's how I troll for the groupers, is I focus all of my efforts on concentrated small areas where I believe the fish are going to be. Okay, I'm not just wasting time in the open ocean, or I should say on open ground somewhere. We're trolling slow, 4.5 knots. Okay, that's really 4.5 miles an hour, 4.5 knots, however you gauge it. You know, you're somewhere there between that 4.5 and 5 miles an hour is what I'm suggesting. So it's not a very fast troll by any means. We're primarily fishing 30 to 40 feet. I know my deep diving plugs, and we're going to talk about these in great detail in a moment. I know they'll swim down at 4.5 to 5 miles an hour. I can get them down 25 feet plus. Okay, and I know that because I'm watching my rod tip and I could see the plug bouncing right off the reef or the rubble. So I know I need to get a little bit deeper because you don't want to get these hung up in the bottom. First of all, they're, you know, expensive, and second of all, you're out of a plug and you don't want to pollute, and you know, there's just no good side to that, right? So that's the depth, you know, 30 to 40 foot along both sides, sharp ledges. I'm spelling it out for you. I'm telling you exactly how to do it. Okay, shorten the learning curve. If something's working for you, great. But that's what Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus is about. It's about shortening the learning curve and helping you be a more successful angler. So if you're not sure where to start, this information is designed exactly specifically for you. Okay, and not a lot of guys do this. I want to add this too. I think that's why I like it so much. You know, everybody's so busy on fishing bait, you know, live ballyhoos, pinfish for the grouper. All works great, no question. You know, a great way to tackle these fish, you know, to approach them. But man, there's just not a lot of guys that are really focused on trolling the gag groupers and the black groupers and the red groupers. And for me, it's a real specialized fishery. It's a very challenging fishery. And that's certainly one of the reasons that I absolutely, you know, am just in love with this fishery. So tackle, let's talk about that because it's real important. You're fishing big plugs. Let's start at the lures and work our way back, okay? We're talking about fishing the big Nomad DTXs, and I just have them here on some Dubrow lure and line keepers. Makes it real easy and, you know, organized, where obviously I can have them right on this lure and line keeper. But nevertheless, it's a Nomad DTX 200. I also fish the 220 size right there, the 220 size, okay? I do not fish small baits. I'm not looking for small fish. I'm fishing big, big plugs. Look at the size of that plug right there. That's the 220. That's the 200 size. Also very, very large. You've got to understand, you're trying to take a fish that could be 10 to 40 pounds, shallow water, he's hiding under a ledge, and you're trying to coerce that fish to come out of his home to grab a bait. He's not going to do it for something this small. He's not going to do it for a small little, you know, bait that's this big. It's not enough of a reward. So I really want to give him something big, and that's why I fish the large plugs. I'm not looking for those small fish. For me, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. I'd rather get fewer bites, but they all be the right bites. Additionally, these Nomad DTXs, I know from such, great success wahoo fishing these lures and great success fishing these for the groupers last fall. They work. That's the bottom line. They track straight. Okay, they swim deep. They've got a big, big lip. They can withstand anything that hits them, anything at all. And they've got big, beefy hooks. And trust me, those hooks are not too big for the grouper. The grouper have big, big mouths. We all know that. And they'll try and inhale that entire bait. So you really get a great hook set on the lure, or I should say on the fish, with those big hooks. So there it is, the DTX 220 and the DTX 200. Those are the two baits that I fish. I fished the 220 a little closer to the boat and a little bit deeper, and I fished the 200 a little bit further away, further back, and it's going to be a little bit shallower. As far as the color of the lures, look, I've had success with bonita patterns, the natural fish patterns, and I've had success with bright pinks and purples, I don't know, I like to mix it up. The groupers seem to like stuff that's bright, so on the 220, I'm gonna start off with a big, vibrant, bright pink lure. Of course, the way that you and I see this bait is not the same way that the grouper sees this bait. It's all about shadows and contrast and shades. So don't look at it like a pink and purple lure. Look at it like a bright lure on the bottom with some darker shades up on top. My next bait is going to be something completely different. This is my 200, and look at that. What does that resemble to you right there? For me, that's a yellowtail. That's a wandering yellowtail. He's lost. He made the mistake to swim away from his school. He's cruising along that ledge, okay, at 4 or 5 miles an hour, just swimming along, right along that ledge, because that's where I'm trolling, right along those ledges. The gag, the black, the red grouper, he's underneath there. He sees that bait coming. That's worth right there darting out from under the ledge to inhale that, because he's really thinking he's getting a big, big meal. So those are the two baits right there, okay, that I'm gonna fish. I'll mix them up, for sure. I'll switch, it's okay, but it's more about how the baits are swimming, where the baits are swimming. That's far more important than the actual color of the lure, because they will eat all of these nomads. They'll eat them all, okay? Let's for a second talk about rigging, all right? Because the rigging is the same no matter, what size. If we're fishing the 200 or the 220, the rigging is exactly the same. And this is very important, because you've got to get these lures to perform at their best. And at their best, meaning letting them, swim as deep as possible, right? So right to the lure itself, I have a piece of 150-pound mono. There it is, 150-pound crimped. Very small crimp, very streamlined. Look, I'll show you that. Very small, very streamlined, crimped right to the ring on the front of the lure. There's no tag end sticking out of there. There's no big bulky swivel. It's very streamlined, very clean. Real important. The leader itself, it's about 6 feet. There it is, right there. Here's the lure, and there's the end of the leader. So it's about 6 feet of 150. I want it to be heavy, because this is going to come in contact with the bottom. This is going to be, hitting the bottom, rubbing up against the reef and the rock, especially if that fish tries to get me back under a hole. So I need some security there. I really do. This is not about fishing light tackle. I'm fishing, well, it's relatively light tackle, but I'm fishing big plugs, big lips, a lot of strain. And I've got to stop this fish in his tracks, because he's going to come out, he's going to grab that lure, and instinctively he's going to turn and try and get right back into its hole, right back under its ledge. So you've got to have enough stopping power to slam the brakes on these things, okay? And if you fish 40 or 50, it's just not going to work. Trust me, I've learned the hard way. It's not going to work. Take it from me. You got to beef it up a little bit. Just the 150 from there. Very small connection, okay, as you can see, 150-pound diamond ball bearing swivel, okay, it's balanced. We've got the 150-pound leader, we've got the 150-pound swivel. Other end of the swivel is tied to a 20-foot section of 100-pound clear mono, Okay, so I've got the lure itself on 6 feet of 150. From there, small little swivel, 20 feet of clear 100-pound mono, okay, nearly invisible in the water, especially trolling at 4 to 5 knots. And then the end of that wind on, we'll call it, is connected to my 50-pound braid. It's high-vis orange braid, the diamond braid, and that's why I've got the clear. Number one, a little bit of stretch, because like I said, that fish is gonna come out, he's gonna slam that bait. We're gonna have a drag sock down, but you need a little something, you need a little bit of stretch to prevent that hook from coming out. So it's for stretch, it's for stealth. We don't want them to see that brightly colored braid, okay? So we use that clear line for stealth. Plus, you know, these leaders are long enough to where if it's chafed up, it's very easy to just cut a short piece off, re-rig, modify, do whatever you need to do. The rod, real important. This is an 8-foot rod. This is my planer rod. I use this for pulling planers, but it's absolutely perfect for this application because it has so much backbone, but yet it has a relatively soft tip right there. So yeah, that's gonna be bent over right there. You can see, I mean, every little, you know, you'll watch that rod tip going just like that. When that lure is swimming, the rod tip should be vibrating like crazy. And, you know, you're able to, boom, you're able to detect even a short strike, or, you know, if the lure hits the bottom and you know you're swimming it a little bit too deep or tracking too deep or fishing too shallow, you know, you can tell so much from that rod tip. If you fish these lures off a heavy bent butt, you're missing the boat because you're not able to detect or to read what that lure is doing in the water. The reel, look, it almost doesn't matter. As long as it's got plenty of drag, you don't need a lot of line. You're only fishing 30 to 40 feet of water. Even a 50-pound black grouper, an absolute giant, he's not going to smoke 100 yards of line off the reel. It's just not going to happen. He's immediately going to go down and into a hole, and your challenge is going to be to either prevent that from happening or to pull him out of there. So you don't need something with a tremendous amount of line, but more importantly, cranking power, smooth drag, which of course you always need, but cranking power and just a balanced setup. You know, a Tiagra 20 would be incredible. A Talica 25, Shimano Talica 25 would work. There's a TLD would work. You know, even though you're pulling big baits, you're not pulling them ridiculously fast, so you don't need anywhere near the drag that you would need when you're wahoo fishing. Any time of the day, okay, morning to night, dawn to dusk, you can catch these fish. I like a moving tide because when the tide is moving, everything is moving. And when everything is moving and there's bait moving, you're certainly much more likely to coerce a fish into feeding. When everything is just absolutely still, the fish seem to be still as well. So look for moving water, that's for sure. Don't give up, you've gotta put in the time. This is not the kind of fishery where you're gonna go out there, put out a couple of baits, and within, you know, 5 minutes, not that it hasn't happened before because it has, but within 5 minutes you've got a limited grouper in the boat. Okay, it's just not gonna happen that fast. Additionally, I will fish, here we go, off of my riggers while I am fishing these 2 deep diving plugs for the groupers. I'm gonna fish a couple of larger Nomad baits, okay, and these are the Mad Scad, the 190 size, okay, the 190 size. Look how big that bait is right there. What does that look like? Looks like a small bonita, big blue runner, looks like any sort of big live bait fish, right? And this lure will track perfectly at 4 to 5 miles an hour, so it's not a very fast moving bait. You don't need to pull it very fast to get tremendous wobbling action from this lure. Okay, right here, it's fast sinking. So this Mad Scad right here, if you just stopped, it would sink. But by moving it at 4 to 5 miles an hour, trolling, you're gonna get it suspended in the middle of the water column. It's not gonna be on or near the bottom, but it isn't gonna be on or near the surface. So it's in there somewhere, and it's big. On that shallow patch reefs where we're targeting these groupers in the 30 to 50 foot range, it is not uncommon for smoker king mackerel to be cruising in there. Big cobia, sailfish, dolphin, blackfin tuna, yellow jacks. There's all sorts of stuff that are cruising in there in those bait-rich waters. So I just increase the odds is really all I'm doing. Not only fishing the 2 baits down deep, but by having 2 larger baits off the riggers as well, I've got a much larger spread. A lot of guys look at me like I'm crazy. Here's this 39-foot CV trolling with his outriggers out in 30 feet of water. They're thinking I'm cuckoo, but I'm the one who's got a big gag in the box and who knows what else, and they're just staring at me. So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try new things, okay? And again, these lures work amazingly well together. It's odd that you can fish different baits, different levels in the water column, and have the synergy between the 2 baits, but these have them. The Mad Max, or I should say the Mad Scad, in the 190 size, and the DTX Minnows in the 200 and 220. Make sure that they're rigged right. Again, these are rigged just a little bit lighter. I don't have the 150 because this is not connecting or coming in contact with the bottom. So I've lightened it up to 100 pound. Still relatively heavy because I'm not fishing any wire and a big kingfish, maybe even a wahoo, you never know. I want that extra bit of protection, even though it's a big lure and chances are he's not going to get the whole thing down his throat. But by having a little bit of heavier mono, I have a little bit more protection without fishing the wire. But I don't need the 150 because, like I said, it's not coming in contact with the bottom. So very clean approach, very simple, but detailed oriented. Your spread's got to be set right. You've got to be trolling at the right speed, and your eyes got to be glued to that Furuno sounder and that Furuno plotter. And I'm just constant situational awareness. Where is my boat in relation to the ledge? Fortunately, here in the Florida Keys, the water generally is crystal clear and beautiful. And in that 30 to 50 foot range, I could visually see, the edges and the outlines of where these rocky and reefy outcroppings are and where the ledges are. But when you can't, there's no substitute for good quality Furuno electronics. So, hey, get out there. It's just a few days away. Live a little. Do something more challenging because I'm telling you what, it's going to be absolutely rewarding and it's going to be the best way you've ever caught grouper before.